You'd be hard-pressed to make a valid argument that capitalism isn't unethical, because it certainly is. And one of the problems with capitalism is its continual drive to convince you to buy things that you don't need, or some things that are just luxuries, but they convince you that they're more important than they actually are. Now, there's not to say that some luxuries are not fine. There is the old expression that someone once told me that there's nothing too good for the working class. But here's where there's a kind of an issue. One of the phenomenons of capitalism is its intent on selling you things in a dishonest manner. Instead of just letting you know what a product does and what a product can, what it's capable of and why you should buy it, etc., they use manipulation tactics. They use unethical ways of trying to get you to buy things. Here's a prime example. There was a psychological phenomenon known as memory jamming. Now, what memory jamming does is essentially alter your existing memories of events and things and puts them in a different light. One of the most famous examples of this is beer commercials. Beer commercials are all about selling you something that essentially, for the most part, doesn't exist. Beer commercials always give you this idea of this like super fun weekend when you drink and there's this great time and everybody's hanging out. But, well, it's never really actually all like that. Drinking a lot is a little bit more complicated and a little bit more, let's call it after effecty. In beer commercials, you'll always notice the way that they portray it as a super happy, fun time. To the point of like, this doesn't happen in real life. But that's the point. Every time they portray drinking in this certain way, it colors the memories that you have of drinking. So they come out in a way that's not exactly the way they put it, where everybody's super happy. Everybody's, super attractive and it's the greatest time ever when, well, drinking leads to a lot of complications. It does happen. That's not to say that I'm not saying that drinking is like some kind of terrible nightmare, but they portray their product, which is a depressant, into something that is into an upper, which it isn't. What's important here is not the degree to which it is dishonest, but the fact that it is dishonest. That advertisers go out of their way to program you, to alter your existing memories of things, what's called retroactive interference. Memory jamming theory of advertising, where this man Shapiro constructs a model of how advertising affects consumer behavior based on the idea that advertising can affect the way consumer remembers his experiences with a product. To portray their product in a way that you'll want to buy it. Because nothing speaks how good a product actually is by having to essentially trick people into buying it. Right? And that's a very real thing. I mean, this is not like the so-called, subliminal messaging thing that supposedly makes you want to do things, which by the way, was an entire fraud. Back in the 1950s, there was a great faked experiment about subliminal messaging where somebody inserted a couple of slides of eat popcorn into a film and then claimed that there was a 60% increase in popcorn sales. Well, the whole thing actually turned out to be a fraud, but people to this day still believe that it was real, that this subliminal messaging thing is a real thing, which it isn't. And repeated studies have shown that it frankly just isn't it's just not real. But there are real ways in which we can be manipulated, and they're not like subliminal messaging. They're actually quite liminal. They're actually very noticeable to someone who's really paying attention. The problem is that we're not really paying attention all that much. One of the problems of television, that it kind of makes you turn your brain off, which it kind of is the point of it. And in many cases, it's certainly justified in doing so. I mean, we all have to turn our brains off once in a while. We all have to relax at some point. God knows capitalism would prefer it if we never did, and then we just would have to keep buying their drugs all the time in order to get by. But you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.